the hardest things about learning Spanish is knowing whether you're actually getting better. Because how are you supposed to measure it? Is it how many words you know, how many grammar points you've mastered, how many mistakes you make when you speak? It really can get tricky because sometimes you're making significantly more progress than you realize. You're just measuring the wrong things. But the exact opposite can be true. You can feel really productive because you're spending hours studying Spanish, completing lessons, learning vocabulary, watching videos, maintaining a 500-day and counting streak on your app. But your actual ability to use Spanish isn't changing much at all. So, how can you tell the difference? How do you know if you're genuinely improving or if you're just checking off boxes? Well, one of our students had an experience recently that illustrates this almost perfectly. Her name is Raven, and a few months ago when she joined us, she wrote something about her Spanish that I think a lot of learners can relate to. She could tell that her comprehension had reached a certain level, but when it came to her speaking, she felt like she still needed to catch up. And then a few weeks later, Raven unexpectedly ran into a Spanish-speaking neighbor that she hadn't seen in a while. And what happened next showed her just how much her Spanish had changed. They talked in Spanish for over an hour. And here's the thing, that same conversation would have felt impossible to Raven just a few weeks earlier. She said, "Our conversations in the past were usually very limited and short. We could never get past, 'Hello, how are you?'" Well, we'll come back later to exactly what Raven had been doing in between these two moments because her experience gives us some important clues about what real measurable progress looks like. But the interesting thing is, Raven's journey with us actually started at something we call open house. And this week, we're opening our doors again. So if you've been learning Spanish or learning about learning Spanish, and you wonder what it would actually be like to step inside of a world where you can use your Spanish every single day with real people, I want to invite you to join us completely free for Open House Week. We've already gotten started and the energy is insane. But if you join today, there are still plenty of days to take advantage of because Open House is 7 days of free live Spanish conversation classes. You meet our real teachers, members of our community, and experience the same structured approach that Raven did when she first joined us for Open House. I'll leave the link below where you can register completely free. And if you're watching this video in the future and you're like, "I can't believe I missed this," go ahead and click on the link below and put your name on the waiting list so that you're the first to know when we do open our doors again. Currently, we host an open house 3 times per year. Now, first, let's talk about what to measure so that you know if you're progressing, and then I'll give you a formula so you know exactly how to do it. So let's start with one of the biggest mistakes I see Spanish learners make when they try to evaluate their progress. They measure what they're doing instead of what they're now able to do. Think about some of the ways learners tend to measure their Spanish. I've been studying for 6 months. I finished another level in my course. I've learned 200 new words according to my app. I have a 500-day streak. These are all measurements of activity, not measurements of ability. Time spent does not always equal progress made. And I think this is one of the reasons Spanish learners can have such a distorted view of their own progress in both directions. You could work with your Spanish an hour a day and absolutely be improving in leaps and bounds. Or you could study Spanish for an hour a day and 6 months from now have the exact same struggles that you struggle with today. So here's what I want you to start measuring instead. What can I do in Spanish today that I couldn't do before? That's a completely different question. And this distinction between activity and actual progress is something Raven experienced firsthand. When she first came to us during open house, she told us that prior she had felt all over the place with her Spanish. But during that open house, after just a few days of experiencing a more structured approach to speaking, this is what she shared with us.
Thank you so much. And guys, I just gotta say, like, this has been such a great week. I found out there's an open house, and this open house has been so great. Like I'm just so excited because of just like how it's formatted. I feel like I was kind of all over the place. I was trying to be structured, and keep that motivation. But it was just so great, like the way, you have your prep materials, right? And I'm going over the vocabulary, but then every time I'm coming to class, we're going over the vocabulary. The teachers are speaking in Spanish. I'm hearing it again. Now I'm trying to use it. So by the third day, I'm a lot of the vocabulary I remember. So I'm just so excited and I'm just so grateful. And that's all I wanted to say.
Thank you so much, Raven. It really,
No
really means a
problem.
lot to us to hear that.
She was preparing something, hearing it, using it, encountering it again, and then having another opportunity to use it again. Because ultimately, progress isn't how much Spanish have I studied, it's what am I becoming capable of doing with it. Well, Raven ended up continuing that process over the next few months inside of the Caminos Conversation Club. And eventually, that real life encounter with her neighbor that we mentioned earlier gave her a pretty incredible way to measure just how much her Spanish had changed. So now I want to give you a really simple formula to evaluate if your Spanish is also progressing. I call it the 3 R's: range, reliance, and recovery. This formula can be applied both to understanding and to speaking, which are the 2 main categories that we want to evaluate for ourselves. Let's start with understanding. Instead of asking yourself this incredibly broad question of, is my listening getting better? I want you to evaluate specifically 3 things. First, range. Is the range of Spanish that you're able to understand expanding? One of the easiest ways to notice this is to look at the variety of topics that you're now able to understand. Maybe when you first started learning, you could follow the clear, predictable topics in your course. Beginner friendly, introducing yourself, your family, ordering at a restaurant, taking a trip, and that's great. You need those topics. But real life doesn't stay inside those topics only from your Spanish textbook. But maybe now you notice that you can follow someone telling you about a problem they're having at work. You can understand a friend telling you a story about something that happened over the weekend. You could follow a conversation about current events, relationship, health, someone's childhood, or a topic that you weren't expecting to talk about at all. That's your range expanding. And range isn't only about the number of topics, it's also about the depth and complexity that you can handle within a topic. Maybe before you could understand, fui a México el año pasado. Me quedé 2 semanas. Me encantó la comida. But maybe now you can follow someone telling you the whole story, what happened at the airport, the flight getting delayed, that thing that went wrong on the 3rd day, why they do it completely differently next time. Same general topic, travel, but you're able to understand much more depth, detail, and complexity within it. Or maybe you used to understand Spanish pretty well and someone was talking to you directly about a familiar topic, and now you catch yourself understanding even parts of conversations between 2 native speakers. Maybe now you can understand more variety of speakers, different regional accents and vocabulary, accents that before just sounded completely unfamiliar. All of that in any one of those pieces tells you the range of Spanish I can understand is getting bigger. That's measurable progress, even if there's still plenty of Spanish that you don't understand yet. The second R, reliance. How much help do you need in order to understand? Maybe 6 months ago you needed English subtitles to follow a video, and then you switched to Spanish captions. Maybe now you can watch that same type of content without subtitles at all. Or perhaps when you were talking to a Spanish speaker, you used to need them to speak very slowly, repeat themselves, or explain some parts in English if they were able to. And now, of course, you can still have those moments. You still may need to ask for clarification. They may have to repeat something, but you find yourself following along with much more of the conversation without relying so much on any of those aids. Or maybe you're understanding more Spanish instantly without translating it in your head first. So there's much less of a delay in your understanding. So these are instances in which it's not a new topic, the situation hasn't changed. What's changed is the amount of support your brain needs to handle it. So ask yourself, am I becoming less reliant on subtitles, repetition, translation, slowed down speaking? If the answer is yes, that's progress. And the third R is recovery. And I think this one gets overlooked perfect all the time, because improving your listening doesn't mean I understand every word that everyone says to me at all times. You're going to miss things. You're going to encounter words you don't know. Someone's going to mumble. You're going to meet that person who apparently decided that spaces between Spanish words, it's completely optional. So the better question is, what happens after I don't understand? Think about your first experiences. You may be listening and then you come across a word you don't know and you're stuck on that one word and the conversation has moved on. And so now you're completely lost and panicked because you've missed everything. But as your listening improves, something important shifts. You miss a word or a phrase or two, and the conversation is able to keep going. Maybe you figure out what they're saying from context. Maybe you realize you really didn't need that part to continue understanding the overall meaning. Or maybe you've gotten good and quick at clarifying. ¿Cómo? ¿Qué quiere decir? ¿Me lo puede decir de otra manera? You repair the breakdown and get yourself back in the conversation quickly. That's a skill that develops over time. And that's listening progress too. So your third question is, how well can I recover when my listening comprehension breaks down? So range, I can understand more variety. Reliance, I need less help. Recovery, I can handle breakdowns better. Measure your listening comprehension through that criteria. Now, what about speaking? The good news, we don't need a different formula to evaluate our speaking. We're going to use those exact same 3 R's. Because one of the worst ways to measure your speaking progress is to continuously ask yourself, do I speak fluently yet? That's such a gigantic target that you could make enormous progress and still continuously answer no to that question. So let's go back to the 3 R's. Range. Has the range of what you're able to communicate expanded? Maybe you used to answer questions with 1 or 2 sentences and now you're able to give more detail. Maybe before you were stuck in present tense, but now you can tell a story about something that happened to you yesterday. Maybe now you can not only give your opinion, but explain why you feel that way. Maybe you've gotten good at asking follow-up questions instead of just briefly responding to the questions that someone asks you. You can talk about more topics. You can stay in a conversation longer without it fizzling out. You don't need to speak perfectly to notice that your range is expanding. So ask yourself, can I express things today that I couldn't express a few months ago? And a second question you can add on to that is, can I express these things more accurately than before? If the answer is yes, your speaking has progressed. The second R, reliance. Do you need less help to speak? For example, maybe you've technically been able to introduce yourself in Spanish for a long time, but 6 months ago you had to prepare everything that you were going to say beforehand. Or there were a lot of words that you didn't know how to say and you had to look them up and remind yourself of them. And today, you just say it. Same task, less reliance. Maybe you still translate in your head sometimes, but less often. Maybe you need less time to formulate your response. Maybe you could enter a conversation without rehearsing everything that you would like to say first. So your range may not have dramatically changed in these particular situations. We're on the same topics, but your reliance certainly has. Everything is more automatic. So ask yourself, am I becoming less reliant on translation, preparation, or outside help to express myself on certain topics that I'm familiar with? And then you can use those tools, because these are not bad things. These are amazing tools. Preparation, translation work, outside help, to new topics that you're not as familiar with, until those also become automatic for you. Do you see how this works? Give me a like on the video if you're still following me. And finally, recovery on the speaking side. What happens when you get stuck? This may be one of my favorite ways to measure speaking progress, because a real conversation ability is not, I never get stuck. It's, when I get stuck, I have more tools to help me get unstuck. Maybe you don't know a word, but instead of completely freezing, you describe it using words that you do know. It's like you're playing taboo, which we do sometimes inside of our classes. It's really fun. Or maybe you start a sentence and realize halfway through that you have no idea how you're going to finish it. So you restructure it and try again. Maybe the other person who is listening to you doesn't understand what you just said, so you find a way to rephrase it. Maybe you find yourself self-correcting more and more. This is always super fun to see with our students. They're speaking, they make a mistake, and before the teacher can say anything, they've self-corrected and moved on. Beautiful progress. So ask yourself, when I get stuck, am I getting better at recovering and keeping the conversation going? So the 3 R's, when applied to speaking: range, I can express more. Reliance, I need less help to say it. Recovery, I can get myself unstuck. If you like this formula and you can see yourself using it, be sure to subscribe to the channel because we talk about practical tips like this all the time. Here's the bottom line. Compare yourself to yourself, not to the language. This may be the most important measurement of all. Spanish is enormous, and there will always be more words that we don't know. The same applies to our native languages. But if you're constantly comparing yourself to everything you don't know yet, the finish line keeps moving. Instead, occasionally pause and compare current you to past you. Think back 3 months, 6 months, even a year. And then ask yourself, what can I do now that I couldn't do before? That's where progress becomes much easier to see. And if you find yourself noticing, wow, I'm putting in the time, but I genuinely cannot see much progress with my understanding and speaking, especially in real life conversations, don't beat yourself up about it, but do pay attention to it because that's information. And it may mean that you need to change what you're doing rather than doing more of the same thing. And that's exactly why I want to invite you to this open house week that we are currently having this very week. For 7 days, we're giving you access to a week's worth of experience of the Caminos Conversation Club, where you'll be able to prepare around a specific conversational topic and use your Spanish in live classes with real teachers who you're going to really like and other Spanish learners around your level because we do have different levels available. And what you're going to notice over the course of the week is that you'll have the opportunity to come back tomorrow or in a couple of days or whenever you can according to your schedule and practice a different angle of that same general topic so that you're not constantly learning something and then immediately moving on to something else. Same general topic, different angles, different people with different experiences, so natural variety. And that's why in just 1 week, if you put in the work and you do your preparation and you attend a few classes, you'll be in a nice position to evaluate what you're capable of doing in just a few days. And then imagine what you'll be able to do weeks and months from now if you keep putting in the work. Register for free for open house at the link below or the link that has appeared on your screen, and I cannot wait to see you inside.